Welcome to the Movement PT Coffee Cast, where we sit down and talk about physical therapy, health, and whatever else comes to mind during our coffee-infused conversations. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Movement PT Coffee Cast. My name's Dalton, and I'm coming at you with another EspressoCast this week. If you are joining us for multiple times, welcome back. We appreciate the consistent support. If this is your first time joining us, also welcome. This is one of the 2 episodes we do here on the PT Coffee Cast. This episode is usually a short hitter where either myself or Will come on and we talk about a particular topic, an experience, a thought, something that might have been floating around social media that we thought was cool. And then we offer it out to you guys to have discussion with us in the DMs or email, etc. And then our other episode is the interview episode where we sit down with another healthcare professional over a cup of coffee and talk about the state of the profession, how we can make it better. Sometimes we'll talk about particular topics like pelvic floor physiotherapy, ACL surgeries, communication, different kinds of topics. We also want to sit down with other healthcare professionals like strength coaches, psychologists, anyone else that we can get on and just have a nice discussion about how we can make the healthcare profession better. Guys, if you want to follow us on social media, we'd appreciate it. Head over to Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter and follow at the MVMTPTs. If you want to reach out to us via email, themovementpts@gmail.com. Also, we're coming up to November, guys, and probably almost a month ago now, we put out an episode that we did with 24 Hours Heroes. We've joined forces with them to try to raise money. We've had a fundraising page going. We've raised money for them. We're still going to ask you guys to support us. We know you guys can help us out. Any amount of money is appreciated, whether it's $1, $10, $20, $100, $1 million, whatever you guys can come up with, we'd appreciate it. If you've ever taken any value away from our episodes or our Instagram content, this is the way that you can repay us. There's a link in our bio on Instagram. There's a link in the show notes to this podcast episode. Also, check out the podcast episode we did with 24 Hours of Heroes if you want to hear a little bit more detail about that. All right, guys, I'm going to jump into today's topic. So I did a little EspressoCast a while back where I talked about like 3 thoughts about entering into physiotherapy school, like what I would have told myself. I'm going to do that again with maybe entering into like being a new clinician. It's been, over a year now that I've been out, and I know some of my friends from physiotherapy school and some people we've met through Instagram, they've stepped out and they're now physiotherapy residents here in Canada, or they're in the US pursuing the start of their career. And I just wanted to share with you guys 3 thoughts that I would have told myself or thought about more when I entered into the profession. These things actually, now that I'm reviewing them, still do apply to me right now. I mean, I am not a master by any means. I've just been in this profession for a year. I've learned a bunch in the first year, and I'm open to continue to learn for the rest of my career. But I wanted to share a couple thoughts with you guys, especially if you've been into the workforce. If you started in September like I did when I first started, you're about a month or so in. And I thought that this could maybe give you some insights into what I experienced. So I'm going to list 3 things out. The first thing that we're going to talk about is not everything has to be done on day 1. But a few things do. So what I mean by that, the initial assessments for me still, and originally when I started, were super overwhelming. It's the first time you're meeting someone, especially when you come out of physio school. You've had a little bit of practice with this, but it's still very overwhelming. You want to make sure that you seem, professional and knowledgeable. Try to figure out what's going on with this person, have the answers. It can be very overwhelming. So one thing that I definitely learned over the course of my first year and still learning today is that not everything has to be done on day 1. We get taught in school this long assessment process, which is great because it goes through all the details. But when someone comes into you, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go through all these things. Sometimes you'll have people where you'll be able to bang through it all and you'll be good to go. Sometimes you'll have people, probably more often than not, that have a lot of things going on, want to talk to you more about their experiences, have different schools of thought that you want to either talk about or at least hear from them. So not everything has to be done on day one, but a few things do. So a few things that I think need to be done on day one is obviously first and foremost, make sure that there's no sinister pathologies going on. Like the things that you learn about in school, the red flags, clear those. Those are super important, and you can get a good gauge on this based off of subjective wording about what they're experiencing. Also, just covering your bases on your objective screens to rule out anything sinister. That's definitely one thing that no matter what, you should get done. Number two, what I try to do on the first day after I clear those things and make sure that that's not something that's really an issue is connecting with this person in some way, listening to their story, understanding where they're coming from, trying to meet them where they're at, and connecting with them on some level, trying to build some level of rapport. This doesn't happen every time, depends on the person, but oftentimes I make it a point to really do that on day one. Second is just get a good idea of what you're dealing with. So sometimes this is easy if it's just a simple injury that comes in, it's a sprained ankle, there's a mechanism of injury, there's a lot of things that are adding up. You can just go through your normal progressions of doing a subjective, doing objective, seeing how people move, seeing what causes discomfort, what doesn't cause discomfort, how irritable are they, etc., etc. But sometimes people come in and there's a lot going on, and I'm sure you guys have experienced this. They just unload on you. They're dropping pain here. I've had this for 2 years, this for 3 years. I can't do this. I can't do that. This is out of place. And they just go off. And at that point is when you need to pick and choose what you want to get through. And so, maybe you do a quicker objective assessment as long as again, it's nothing acute, nothing that they're going to do more harm to themselves if they pursue, continuing activities. And then you just see, what movements, again, feel good, what doesn't feel good, what they're stuck, what they're worried about, what they're maybe not doing in their life that you could get them back to doing in some capacity. If I can walk away with 1, clearing red flags, 2, connecting on some level with this person, and 3, most importantly, giving them one actionable step to getting them towards their goal, I'm usually pretty happy with that. Obviously, if there's other people that, you don't need to go through all those steps with and you can get a lot more information on day one, great. But those are the 3 things that I like to try to get done for sure on the initial assessment. And if you don't have time to do certain things, they're going to come back to you the next time and you can reassess or you can continue your assessment, and that's totally okay. And sometimes it's even okay to bring that up with them and be like, hey, we've been chatting, you've been telling me your story, it's important that I hear this. What do you think about continuing on? Would you like me to continue on and do a more in-detailed objective assessment, or would you like to continue on talking about or going through your story if that's important to you? And then we'll take a quick look at some things, and then when you come back, we can further assess those things in detail. And you know what? Some people are totally down for that. And they're like, yeah, I want to just keep doing this. Or other people are like, no, okay, let's move on to the next part. And then you go on to the next part. If you don't get all of your objective measures day one, don't freak out about it. That's why connecting is usually at the top of my list, because then if you've connected with that person, you've talked about the game plan, you've discussed how you're going to help them get back to what they want to do, they're more than likely going to come back to you the next time. Number 2, and this is big, and this is probably, there's no particular order on these ones, but this is one that I've learned the hard way and continue to deal with, is learning to not take on others' emotions. And man, is it hard, especially in our profession. We're all in this profession to help people. We care a lot. Most of us hopefully care a lot. We want to help the person across from us. It's very, very easy to consume other people's emotions, especially because oftentimes they're coming to you not in a good place. And so early on, and this is still a challenge for me, but early on, I would take all of their emotions on. If someone had like something terrible happen to them, workers' compensation, motor vehicle accident, haven't been able to do something they've liked, it significantly affected their life, and they're, down about it, sometimes depressed, sometimes frustrated. Like oftentimes I would, take all of this emotion on in our interactions, and man, can that become draining. And so I've really learned to implement a couple different strategies on how not to do that. That doesn't mean that I'm not, still caring. I'm not still focused on the person. I'm not empathetic, or compassionate towards them. but there's certain things that you need to put up barriers on and not take on that emotionally in order for you to get through the day. So one way that I did that, a strategy that I use, and I read this in a book somewhere, and I can't remember what the name of the book is, but you literally go into a conversation with someone, especially if you know this person's going to dump their emotions on you. You literally put up an imaginary shield around you. And like, I know this sounds a little bit out there, but I would actually visualize a shield around myself and just do my best to be aware that this person is in a tough spot. They have emotions, but that's not my responsibility. And I'm not going to take those emotions on. I'm going to use this shield to protect me from them. I'm still going to hear them and acknowledge them and validate them, but I'm not going to actually take on those emotions for myself. So that's one way that I've done that. Another one, and shout out to Nick Hanna. We do this often in the clinic, and he did a couple posts on this. But this idea of finding your pockets, he called it. Check out his post on it. But one way that I go about finding my pockets is, one, maybe, you have a little bit of time in your day. Take a quick walk if it's nice, get out, take a couple deep breaths, get some fresh air, remind yourself, hey, you know what, I can do this, I'm in this, positive self-talk, whatever it may be. Honestly, finding those pockets even within a session. So something that I've done before, and probably could do more, is if you're in the middle of an initial assessment or even a session that's like, really challenging, and you're dealing with someone that might be, again, having a lot of emotion, frustration, they're not getting better, etc. Like, don't be afraid to step away for a second, take a deep breath, whether that be like, say, hey, I'm going to let you finish this up. I'm going to step away to the washroom, or whether your initial assessment, just be like, I need to step out for 1 second and grab something. Like, it's okay to do that. Step out, take a couple deep breaths, whatever that is for you that you can use to ground yourself. So that's a great way to do it. And then another one that you can kind of compound onto, like stepping away, is have little reminder phrases that you kind of utter to yourself, whether that be like if you step out to the washroom or you're just saying it in your head, to kind of keep you focused. So one that I like to use, and it's something I've been doing recently, is when I kind of find myself drifting away from focusing on the session, which happens, like we all have things going on in our life, we're human too. When I start to notice that I'm drifting away, or let's say I'm moving between clients and I'm really like flustered or a lot was going on, I'll take a second to step away to the washroom or just by myself and say, be in it. And that's kind of the phrase that I like to use. And I heard that somewhere, and I really thought it was a great idea. And that just kind of reminds me just to be in the moment, focus on what's going on right now, try not to wander off to other things that are going on. That person that is coming in to see you does deserve your attention, and you want to try to give your full effort to them. So I'll just like utter those words to myself, be in it. It can be anything for you, whatever you like, some things that can just remind you to stay focused, to be grounded, whatever it is. Try to maybe find a phrase that you can throw in there. This one, learning to not take on others' emotions, is something that I really highly recommend that you guys try to find strategies on how to deal with it. There's a lot of like books and podcasts and other information pieces out there that can help you deal with this. It's really important, I think, for the longevity of us as clinicians. And number 3 would be, don't be afraid to ask for help. This is something that still to this day I get a little worried about it. Even though I'm in a great clinical environment, I have a good mentor, I have good people around me, it can be, overwhelming. Maybe not overwhelming, but you can be afraid to ask for help. But you know what? It's okay. You're learning. Everyone in this profession is still learning. If anyone ever makes you feel bad for asking for help, then that person that's making you feel bad for asking for help needs to reevaluate things, because no one has all the answers. No one has it all figured out. We're all on this journey trying to figure out how we can learn and be the best clinician person we can. So don't be afraid to ask for help. And how this could look is, for example, just the other day, I had a weird scenario going down in my initial assessment. There were some findings that were popping up that I was like, this is weird. I've never really seen this before. I don't even know really how to explain it. And I finished my assessment, and then I talked to the client and I said, you know what? Hey, I have my colleague here. I'd be interested to show him, some of these findings that are going on, to get his input on it. I think it would be good to get a second set of eyes on it, to get their personal thoughts. What do you think about this? And that person was open to it. So I went out and I had Nick, who I work with, come in, and he took a look, and we kind of talked together, and then we came up with, a little thought, and then he stepped out and I continued on. And it was really good because I was, to be honest, a little overwhelmed. I wasn't exactly sure, how to respond to it. So like having someone that's been through an experience like that, or just has a little bit more wisdom or thoughts or even just knowledge than you do, come in to help you and, either reinforce what you're already thinking in your head, but you don't really trust yourself yet because it's not something you experienced, or maybe to come and correct you with something that you made a mistake. It's really good to have that. So don't be afraid to ask for help. And honestly, if the biggest worry I had early on was if I did that in front of a client, they would think that I don't have the knowledge. And you know what? Maybe that will happen, and you might lose a person or two because of it. But more often than not, if you actually just sit down with the client and be open to them and tell them what's going on and say, hey, I'm going to have someone, my colleague, kind of like the scenario I just talked about, most people are more than happy to have that. And they actually feel better about the fact that you're taking the time and doing your due diligence to make sure that they're okay and that they're being taken care of. So those are the three things, guys, I wish I would have thought to myself when entering, into my early times of practicing. Again, these aren't tips. These aren't things that you need to do. I think, those things get blown out of proportion in a sense, like here's 10 tips to be the best clinician possible. These are just experience that I've had and thoughts that I wish I would have known myself when I went back. This is a good reflection piece for me. And you know what, if you guys take away something from this or a little snippet of it that you implement into your practice and it helps you, great. If not, if you don't take anything away from it, thanks for tuning in. If you have some ideas, thoughts around maybe 3 things you wish you would have told yourself, or if you have ideas on these 3 topics that I covered that I didn't talk about, like send me a message. I'm learning just like you guys are. This is fun for me. It's a good reflective piece. Like I said, it helps me be better. So I'm going to end it there, guys. If you enjoyed this episode or took any value away from it, please head over to iTunes, subscribe to the PT Coffee Cast, and drop us a review. Also, guys, please help support 24 Hours of Heroes. Click the link in our bio on Instagram. Click the link in the show notes below. Donate what you can. It's going to go to a great cause. Me and Will are really excited to be a part of this, and we want to try to raise as much money as we can. All right, guys, we love you. Peace.